This is a review on redundancy and parallelism. So we're going to go over some of the major concepts, run through some reviews, and at the end, just a whole bunch of practice. So first up, redundancy. These are words that may repeat or say the same thing in a sentence. We call those redundant. So in our first example, they can, for example, install racks where employees and customers can. The words securely and safe are redundant, or indeed securely and safety. Those words say the same thing, and you don't need them twice. So C is the best answer, because it's the only one that does not do that. Number 2, as soon as the runway was finished, residents of the neighborhoods around the airport began to complain about the incessant low-frequency drone that was constantly present. So this word incessant means without stopping. So constantly or constant and not stop all mean the same thing as incessant. The only one that doesn't repeat that idea twice is choice B. Number 3, every year humans produce more than 300 million metric tons of plastic annually. So annually or annual basis or annual occurrence, all of these are redundant with every year. D is the only one that doesn't repeat that idea. Next up is worthiness, related to redundancy, in that in both of these concepts, shorter is considered better, taking out words that repeat or words that are unnecessary. In this case, we're looking at inflated and useless phrases that could be omitted or condensed into fewer words. Number 1, as people blank through online media, skills such as blogging, web design, and video production are becoming increasingly important. These phrases chat about things more, increasingly communicate, express what they think a lot of the time, or convey their musings in greater quantities, really all say the same thing. All else being equal, as long as they're grammatically correct and don't add any additional details, the shortest one is going to be the better one, as a good writer is a concise writer. So increasingly communicate is the best choice here. There are some other things going on with tone, D being far too formal and A being too informal, but the wordiness approach works. Number 2, Henry's actions opened the door for the Protestant Reformation in England, which led the way to forever altering the future of his country. This phrase, which led the way to, adds nothing. The sentence is the same without it. And if we say to forever altering, that doesn't really fit with the verb there, or which forever altering, doesn't fit either. D is the best choice. It is the most concise, the least wordy. For number 3, in fact, only one of his 6 wives bore him a son, and this son, Edward, reigned for only a few years, 6 years as a matter of fact. Conversationally, we might repeat things like this. As a matter of fact, this phrase is unnecessary. And saying only a few years, well, if we're going to say 6, we don't need to say a few. So B is our best choice. And the next concept has to do with parallel lists. And lists are 3 or more items separated by commas, and they must all be in the same grammatical form, which means have the same part of speech and the same tense. In this first example, spiders are predators. In the insect world, they're fearsome animals. The tiny equivalent of wolves, lions, or blank. So wolves and lions are both nouns. So we're looking for, right after or here, to see a noun. We see a gerund, we see a pronoun, we see the word as, or we see sharks. Which one of these is a noun? That is C. That's the best answer. In order to qualify, candidates must do 3 things. They must complete a master's degree, they must pass a written test, and they must blank professional experience. So this third word has to be a verb in the present tense like complete or pass, which means B is the best answer. We have a gerund, a pronoun, and a future tense verb for these other choices. In number 3, we have a list of 3 different comparative adjectives. Studies have shown that employees are happier, healthier, healthy not being correct because it's not a comparative adjective. And either we can say more productive, being more productive, or they are more productive. We don't need to include the they are or the being. And B was wrong because of the healthy. So that leaves A, no change, more productive, as the third comparative adjective. The fourth and final concept on this assessment was parallel phrases. The construction of a phrase on one side of a conjunction must match the construction of the phrase on the other side of the conjunction as closely as possible. So everything in terms of structure, part of speech pattern, tense, etc. So for number one, they suggest revisions such as changing words and blank sentences and paragraphs. So and is our conjunction, and in front of it we see changing words, and after it we see blank sentences. So matching the ing, we would choose rearranging. Number two, when he tracked the workers over several years, he discovered that the tiny loans not only helped the basket weavers survive, and also creating the motivation for them to pull themselves out of poverty. So this not only phrase ends with but also, which means and or and here are incorrect. And the verb phrase after not only is helped in the past tense, which matches with created. Number three, I had never left the state, let alone departing from the country. This is not matching up left and departing. In fact, those two words are redundant. Instead, we are matching up the state with the country. And we don't need from or departing from. B is the best choice. Some more redundancy examples. Orozco also worked by himself in solitude, or with a single assistant. So by himself and in solitude, alone in solitude, or alone by his solitary self, all of these are redundant. The one that doesn't repeat is B, in solitude. For number two, covered in the examples before, incessant, constantly, would not stop, and constant are all redundant. That's why B was the best choice. And number three we also hit, so going on to number four, for the most part, is an unnecessary wordy phrase that we can just delete. Same thing with on the whole or generally speaking. D was our best choice because none of these change the meaning of the sentence. They're just fluff. Number five, they can, for example, install racks where employees and customers can securely, in a safe place, safe, safety, securely, all kinds of redundancy there. C was the only one that did not repeat. And a couple more here. Number six, the average energy savings for certified buildings is around 32%. And over the next couple of decades, the tonnage of coal avoided is estimated to grow by 16 times according to predictions. So estimations and predictions are pretty much the same thing. That's why C was the correct answer. And in number seven, we see that adjective ancient, describing the tale. So if we also say it came a very long time ago, or originated long ago, or very old, all of those are redundant. D is a better choice. 8, we see that every year and annual redundancy. So we're going to go with D, plastic. And number 9, we see independently, on my own, independent, on my own, independently are all redundant. D was the best choice. For number 10, at this time, the Catholic Church had the sole authority to end a marriage, and even then, only by declaring that the marriage had never truly existed in God's sight. So sole authority, this phrase means that they are the only ones. The only ones. It was only the Catholic Church. All of those phrases are redundant with sole authority. That's why A is the best choice, to avoid the redundancy. Moving ahead to some more practice on parallel structure. We see grammar, punctuation, and spelling. These three things are all nouns. So copy editors review documents for errors in grammar, for errors in punctuation and for errors in spelling. Number 13, they suggest revisions such as changing words and rearranging sentences. That was a repeat. Number 14, whether it's with a sympathetic tilt of the head or an excited sweep of the tail, dogs often seem to be saying that they can sense exactly what we're feeling. So these phrases literally say a something of the head and a something of the tail. Their structure is identical. That's why that choice A is the best one. For 15, in fact, a recent study found that dogs are able to distinguish between expressions that indicate happiness and those in which anger is indicated. So we see able to distinguish between, and then we have the phrase expressions that indicate happiness. We have the conjunction and, with is no good. That rules out D. Ones that indicate anger, that indicate happiness, that indicate anger, that same structure, and ones and expressions match each other as well. That's why C is our best choice. So 16, thunder snow is essentially the same as a thunderstorm. The only difference is that snow falls instead of rain falling. So it's tempting to try to line up snowfalls and rainfalls and make them parallel, but in this case, we are just making snow and rain match up and snow falls instead of rain. We can delete falling or that falls or it falls. Number 17, throughout World War II, the United States government rationed foods such as, and we see a list of foods. Sugar, milk, coffee, and meat are all nouns, so the consumption doesn't really fit. Or to consume or consuming don't fit. Instead, we want D, canned goods. Same part of speech as the others in the list. And 18 and 19 we've already seen, so let's jump ahead to 20. Every time a road is widened, a highway is constructed, or a parking lot is built, the planet loses a bit more of its green space. So we see the entire structure of the phrase, a something is repeated, and we're just filling in those blanks.